Okay, good morning. Today we're on 47a at the very top. The Mishnah had said, "Hayachon hen mesachik b'kuga." If one of the people involved in the case was a gambler, then the other one takes a shvuah because he's not believed to take a shvuah. We don't wish to make him take a shvuah since we suspect him of not being honest. Hatulamali. What do we need this for? Why is a gambler a different category than what we already said? It's someone who's not allowed to take shavuos, who's disqualified himself by his behavior. It doesn't take a shvuah, so why is this any different? Well, it's just Tana Psula Daraisa. First, it talks about the Daraisa disqualification. So Katani Psula Darabana. Now, this is a rabbinic restriction. Hayushne and Chashudin, the Mishnah said if both people involved were suspected of false oaths. So Rabbi Yossi said the shvuah goes back to the original place, and Rameir says they split. So Amalei Rav Nachman Rav said, Heiche Tnan. How did we which opinion do we ascribe to which of Rav Yossi and Rav Meir? Amalei Yadana. He said, I don't know who said what. Hilsamai, what's the halacha? Amalei Yadana. He doesn't know that either. Tomorrow we have a statement. Rav Yossi Bar Menuhin Rav Nachman. Rav Yossi said in the name of Rav Nachman. Rav Yossi Omer Yachloku. Rav Yossi is the one that says they should split. V'chein Tani Rav Tzvi Bar Rosh Yosef said Rav Tzvi Rav Yossi Omer Yachloku. Ika Diam, right? Tani Rav Tzvi, or some say the way this was taught is Rav Tzvi says Amar Rav Oshia. He taught in the name of Rav Oshia. Rabbi Yossi Amar Yachloku. Same outcome. Amar Yossi Bar Menuhin. Avad Rav Nachman Uvda Yachloku. And what Rav Nachman did, as far as the question of who's the halacha like, Rav Nachman ruled like the opinion of that we're now ascribing to Rabbi Yossi, which is they should split and nobody takes a shvuah. Chazar Shulam Kama. So what the other statement was, the shvuah goes back to his plates, which we're now ascribing to not Rabbi Yossi but Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yami, Leichan Chazra. What does it mean? Where does it go? Rabbi Seinish of Babel Amru Chazra Shul Sinai. The rabbis say it goes back to Har Sinai. In other words, the Torah says you can collect by making a shvuah, but in this case, it's not allowing you. We're not allowing you to take the shvuah, so the shvuah can go back to Har Sinai metaphorically. Rabbi Seinish of Yisrael Amru, with the Palestinian rabbi said. Chazra Shua Lumachuyev goes back to the one that was originally obligated to take it. In other words, the one who is being charged, who were according to the claim is made against him. He's the one that takes the shvuah, and since he can't take the shvuah, so he has to pay. Okay, that's kind of ikar chaser min sefer, right? It's not so obvious that that's what it means, but that's what the rabbis in Eretz Yisrael said. It means that he can't take the shul anymore, so he has to pay. Amar Papa, Rav Seinish of Bavel. Who are these Babylonian teachers? Rav Shmuel, Rav Seinish of Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Abba, and the Palestinian teacher is Rabbi Abba. Now, Rav Seinish Bavel, Rav Shmuel. How do I know that that's attributed to Rav and Shmuel? That Chazar Shvuah means there is no Shvuah. It goes back to Har Sinai, and he has to pay. No, that. That the shore just disappears and there's no way to enforce anything. How do you know that's Rav and Shmuel? It's none. There's a case in the Mishnah where the orphans have to make a shua in order to pay. Vavina, we discussed this. Miman. Like who's who are what does it mean orphans? Like who's the orphan here? What's the case? Ilema Milova. If you say that the orphans collect from the actual borrower avu and shakal below shvua, the father could have collected without a shvua v'inu b'shvua. We're going to make orphans make them worse off, make them take a shvua. That doesn't make sense because. because why would their rights? Usually, the orphans' rights are great, are improved. So if they have some kind of proof, if the father had some kind of proof, like there was some document and they still have it, then what do you need a shua for? El hachihar, it must be the following. V'chein hayisomin min hayisomin le'parel b'shua. We're talking about orphans of the malva collecting from orphans of the lova. So everybody, all the original players are gone, and it's the estates which are fighting over this. So the Yisomim of the Malva have to swear that as far as they know, the loan is still unpaid, and um, so in other words, so we see that the Yisomim can the Yisomim can collect. Like they don't know for sure, right? The thing about Yisomim is like the original guy can say I never collected, but his heirs can't say that. Maybe he had collected, so they don't know that he collected. As far as they know, their father may have told them even that he hadn't collected, but they don't know it as for sure, and still they can take shvua. For Rav Shmuel D'Amar Tarvayu, Lo Shona Lo Shemes Malva B'Chai Lova. That's Rav and Shmuel both say that's only when the lender died while the lova is still alive. So then the Yisomim can take the shvua. Aval makes lova b'chayim malva, but if the borrower dies first, and then the lender dies, kfar nischayev malva livnei lova shvua. Then the lender already had to take a shvua, right? Because he's collecting from Yisomim, right? So if the malva is still alive, while he's still alive, is in a situation where to collect, he would have to take a shua to collect from the Yisomim. Ve'inad morish shua levanov, and you can't. A shua is not something that you can pass on to this. You can't pass it on to your orphans, to your estate, because again they don't know for sure, right? The Malva himself knows for sure, but the Yisomim of the Malva they don't know for sure, so we can't make them take a shua. So that's why it makes sense. So this is consistent with the idea that the shua going back to Sinai means we have no way of knowing, who gives who. There's no way to have either of them take a shua, so we just leave things as they are. Rabbi Yisrael. Now, how do we know this Rabbi Abba who said that Chaz v'Shualim Koma means that that it goes back to Har Sinai in the sense that it goes back to the one who was originally supposed to take it? Do Gavra, because there was a case with Rabbi Abba, the Chataf Naska Mechavre. Somebody grabbed a silver bar from somebody else. Also, coming to Ravami, and they come to Ravami. Yasiv Rabbi Abba Kameh, and Rabbi Abba was there. I say Chad Sado the Michtav Chatfamine, and one witness was brought that Reuven grabbed he saw him grab the silver bar from Shimon. Amalei in Chatfi, and Reuven says, yes, I did. I took it from him. V'didi Chatfi, but it belonged to me. That's why I took it from him. So, Amar Avami, how are we going to judge this case? Name Zil Shalim. If we say Reuven has to pay like a Tresade, we don't have two witnesses that he even took it in the first place. On the other hand, he admitted it. So, Niftere, should we let him off the hook altogether? But there's one witness, so he should at least have to take a shvua. So we tell him to take a shvua. But he himself admits that he stole that he grabbed it, right? So he is admitting that he grabbed something from somebody else, right? So that makes him suspect enough that he can't take the shvua. So what do we do? Well, this is a case of somebody who should have taken a shvua, but he can't. And what do we do? So he has to pay. So this corresponds with what we said before, how we understand the teaching of the rabbis of Eretz Yisrael, which we attributed to Rabbi Abba. Amar Rava, Kavase Rabbi Abba Mistabra, and we think this is right. The Tani Rabbi Yami, because Rabbi Yami taught, Shvuas Hashem Tiyeh Bein Shneim. The Torah says a shvua of God should be between the two of them. Between the two of them, now thinking again about the Yisomim versus the Yisomim, it's like between the two litigants, right? Shuas Hashem Tien Ben Shneim seems to refer to the original parties, the Malva and the Lova and the Yarshim, but there's no Shua. We cancel the idea of a Shua if it's between the Yisomim. Hechidame. So now let's analyze this a little. Um, if one pair of Yisomim says to the other, one son of Yisomim says to the other, your father owed us $100, or owed our father $100. And the other says, well, he owed 50, but not the other 50. He only owed half. Malihu, mali yavua. So since he's saying this for sure, like what's the difference between the Yisomim or the parties themselves? Elalav, there wouldn't he would still have to take a shua. Elalav diamarle manalaba bialavich. It's a case where he says, my father owed your father owed our father $100. Amarle, and the other one says, chamshin yadana v'chamshin lo yadana. I know that you owed 50. I don't know about the other 50, right? Maybe it was two different loans, or maybe he might have paid it back, right? So. So Yamas Bishlam Aviv Ki Hai Gavna Mechayev, if you want to say that the original Lova had said that he admitted to owing 50 but denied the other 50, Istrichol Mifter Gabi Yarshin. So if that's the case, then what do you need a pasuk to say that the Yarshim are off the hook from a shvua? They don't have to pay the full amount, right? It's kind of a mode of a mixus thing. Eliyamar Aviv Ki Agavna Nami Potter. But if you want to say that the Lova himself would have been Potter altogether, so Kragabi Yashin Lamali, then what do you need a pasuk for, right? In other words, like why is it any different in either side if you assign, if you go down a generation and talk about the Yarshim? It seems like it should be the same rules that you follow for the father. If it's a 50-50 thing. So, in other words, this brisa is consistent with Rabbi Abba that if the lova or the yisomim of the lova can't take an oath, then they have to pay. V'Rav Shmuel. Now, what about Rav Shmuel, the Babylonian interpretation? How would they approach this case? Like, isn't this a problem for them? They say that Chazra Shul and Kama means that we don't allow the shvua, and therefore we don't enforce payment. So what do you do with this pasuk? Chashuas Hashem, my kadosh be. So, what does this pasuk tell you? Because we are doing a different rule for the father and in the estate. That they use as follows. Shimon ben Tarfon Omer, Shvuas Hashem Tiyeh Bein Shneim. This pasuk, Melamed Shashvua Chol Al Shneim. That the shvua, not taking the shvua, but the responsibility, the punishment for having to take the shvua, that devolves on both of them. Both because one takes the shvua and the other makes him take the shvua as it is by advancing his claim. Okay. Shimon ben Tarfon Omer. Azhar la'okei v'achar noef minayin. Where do you get an isur for okei v'achar noef is someone who acts as a pimp, basically, as someone who acts as an agent for an adulterer. Talmud Lomar, lo sinaf, lo sanif. The Torah says lo tinaf, don't commit adultery, and we can also read it lo sanif, don't cause others to commit adultery. It's totally tangential, just because it's said by Shimon ben Tarfon. Vateragnu bihalechem. Here's another one of Shimon ben Tarfon. The Torah says when Moshe is reviewing the events at the end of the 40 years in the desert in Sefer Devarim. He's reviewing the events of the past, and he says about the incident of the Meraglim, you were in your tents and you did this, which Rabbi Shimon ben Tarfon says what it means is tartem v'ginisem b'yalei shel makom. Tartem is like the Taf and Resh from Vateragnu. You did this spying. V'ginisem and ganu. The end of the word is like you disparaged the tent of Hashem. So this is a portmanteau, I think is the word, of how to explain this word. You spied and you disgraced Hashem, you disparaged Hashem. And yet one more, Adon Nahar Gadol Nahar Pras, in describing the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. Moshe says that it's from the great river Pras. Um, uh, Something that seems to be coming true in our times. I say with tongue in cheek. Shimon ben Tarfon Omer, Shimon ben Tarfon says, Kurav legabi dehina ve'idhan. Touch someone who's greasy and you'll get greasy. In other words, why is the Pras called the Nahar Gadol? It's only the fourth. Nahar Pras is one of the four rivers mentioned in the describing the rivers that come out of Gan Eden, right? And it's the fourth one. It says each one is described Chidakel and I can't remember the other two names, but the fourth, Nahar Pras is mentioned as the fourth one. It sounds like it is not such a great river like the other ones, but because it's mentioned in the same category, in the same description with these other great rivers, so it's like you touch somebody who's oily, and you'll get oily as well. So that's why Nahar is called Nahar Gadol. By Rabbi Shmuel Tana, and by Rabbi Shmuel they taught Eved Melech Kemelech. Same idea that if you're the servant of a king, then you have some kind of royal standing, right? You're not just a nobody. You're the secretary to the king. So if Nahar Pras is the boundary of Eretz Yisrael is obviously great, so the river is called great as well, even though it may not be the greatest of all rivers, but it is associated with Eretz Yisrael, so it can be called great as well. Okay, next piece in the Mishnah, Hachenvani al Pinkasa. If you have a tab at a store, then and the storekeeper demands payment, then yeah, what we're talking about is, yes, a Baal Weiss has a tab with a storekeeper, and he wants to pay his workers with by having the storekeeper pay them out, and he'll pay the storekeeper back later. So if everybody says, if the workers say nobody ever paid us, then both the chemvani, the storekeeper, and the workers can take a shvua, and then the workers can collect from the balbais. Now, Banana said that this is going to lead to this could lead to a false shvua, so we don't want to enforce it. So we allow both parties to collect from the balbais, right? Now, Tanya, Amar Rabbi Tarech Shvua Zulama. Why do we make him take a shvua? So, in other words, I don't think this would be a good idea. Amar Rabbi Barava, Tanina, you taught us in the Mishnah. Shneim nishboim v'notlim balabais. The Mishnah says they both swear and collect. So why are you questioning it? So kiblu minei, oh look, kiblu minei. Now, did Rabbi accept this argument or not? Tashma, let's see. The Tanya, we have a brisa. Rabbi Amar Polin Yishmael Lechamvani. Rabbi, who we are talking about here, says that the workers make a shvua to the storekeeper that they didn't collect, and then they collect it. If it's true, the Baal Bais Mivayle should say they collect from the Baal Bais, right? But it seems to be saying they collect from the storekeeper. Um, so Amarava. So it seems like Rabbi, uh, um, it seems like he says that only the workers make the shua, and then they can collect. And the Chanvani doesn't also take the shua. Amarava, Pauline Mishwan Balvais, B'mamad Chanvani. Now that's not what it means. What Rabbi meant was, yeah, the workers make the shua, but they make it to the balbais, to the employer, with the chanvani present. Because that way, it will be harder for them to make a false shua if the guy who if he had actually paid them, if he's standing there, or if the guy that they claim paid them is standing there and they know the truth. Everybody, they know the truth, and the storekeeper knows the truth. So if he is there, then they'll be too embarrassed to make a false shua. They won't have the nerve. Itmar, we have a case. If you have two pairs of witnesses with contradicting testimony, each one comes to the court each set of witnesses comes by themselves to the court. And about something. So bifnei asma means about another case, right? So you have contradictory witnesses. Somebody here is lying, but you don't know which one. So, do we disqualify them from future cases? Rav Huna says no. Each one is still in their chazkas kashrus, and they can come and testify about other things. Rav Chisda Amar Bahali Sali Shakar Lonely. What do I need lying witnesses for? Disqualify everybody, right? If somebody here is lying, then we don't want any of these people in our courts because they might be the liars. Um, so. Um, so here are some cases where this would apply. Shnei Malvin, Shnei Lovin, Shtei Sharos. There's two sets of lenders, and they lent to two borrowers, and there's two different documents. Hainu Plutayu. That's the case where it applies. The One second. Oh, this is the case of the future case, right? Where where the witnesses are testifying through their signatures to something completely different. That's what the machlokas is about. Malva v'lova shtei sharos. But what if it's one lender, two loans, one lender and one borrower, and two separate loans and two documents? So Yad Bal Yad Bal Shar al Tachtona. The one who holds the documents has the disadvantage. He can only collect the the smaller of the two loans. I'm losing the thread here. Just a second. Okay, I'm missing something here. What's the why are these documents contradictory? Okay, so two. Oh, Okay, so I'm looking at Rashi. Yesh lo adam echad, shtei shtaros al shtei halvos al chavero. Um, One guy holds two IOUs on two separate loans on the same guy, right? The same borrower. V'achas mehen chasuma al zeh, v'achas al zeh. And one of the pairs of witnesses is written on one of the documents and one on the other. Yad bal hashtar al tachtana. Um, then you lose out. If you've got both of two each if each IOU has one of the witnesses who may have been lying previously on it, then you're out of luck, right? But um, but what if you have Malu Lova Ushtei Shtaros? Um, yeah, Shnei Malvin Lova Echad Ushtei Shtaros. You have two lenders. Um, okay. All right. All right. You have two sets of witnesses. I got it. Two sets of witnesses, and you know that one of them was lying, but you don't know which one. And now you have um, two loan documents, right? One was signed by one set of witnesses and one by the other. Okay. So you know that one of these documents is valid because it has the witnesses that weren't lying. You just don't know which document it is, right? You know that one of the sets of witnesses was lying. Um, and now you have two documents in which one is signed by one set of witnesses, one by the other set of witnesses, but you know that one of them is liars and one is not liars. So which one do you collect? So you can collect the smaller amount, the smaller loan amount, because you know that if that's the valid one, if one is $30 and one is $50, right? So if the $30 IOU is the valid one, then fine, collect that. If the $50 one is the valid one, but you don't really know if it is, you only know that at least $30 is owed, so you collect 30 of the 30 in either case. Um, so now, Shnei Malvin V'Lova Echad Ushtei Sharos, if there's two lenders and one borrower and two documents, Hainu Masnisin. That's our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says we have both the Chenvani and the workers take the Shevuot and collect from the Baal Bais, even though we know one of them is lying. So that's similar to this case. Beis Lovin Umalva Echad, but what if there's two borrowers and they each borrow this from the same lender in two different documents? In that case, what do you say? Do you say that the um, can the lender collect from the two different people, from one of the two different people? Teku. So we don't have an answer for that. Um, so is it like if it's the same witnesses, is it like they both signed? Yeah, if we look at the two cases as a whole, then we know that somebody's lying, right? If we look at each case separately, so we have a doubt about is this the lying one or not the lying one, and we could validate it. Okay. And this would be, I think, a good place to stop. So we will stop. Um, One second. No, let's continue a little bit. Yeah, let's go to the two dots. We have time, right? Yeah, okay. Um, okay. Mostly Rav Huna Bar Yehuda. Rav Huna asked this question. The Brisa says, Echad Omer Gavoa Beis Marvels. We have testimony about the new moon, about the Kiddush HaChodesh. One set of witnesses says this is how high the moon was, like two ox yokes, whatever, two measures above the horizon. V'yachal omer shalosh, and the other said, no, we saw the new moon and it was three above the horizon, three measures above the horizon. Edusam kayamas. Then we allow that testimony. Echad omer shlosha, v'echad omer chamisha. If they say one says it was three high and the other says five high, right? Then that's two, like two between two and three. Maybe they're just estimating a little wrong. They're not actually, it's not like taking a tape measure, right? You're making an estimate. So, the fact that they estimate a little bit differently is not necessarily that one is lying. They're just not quite, they weren't able to be so accurate. But if the difference is between 3 and 5 measures, then edusam batela, then we don't believe anybody. And we start from later sacheres. However, any of those witnesses can if another witness comes along and says, I also saw 5, so one of the 5 guys can join with him, okay, because he's not being contradicted. What does it mean? Edus acheres, lav edus mamon. So it doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean or another testimony about the moon. Well, that wouldn't make sense because there's still, if you're joining with another guy who says 5, but you're still contradicting the guys who said 3. So it must be talking about that. Wouldn't make sense to now give him more nemanis, right? So it must be we're talking about another case, right? Even though you're kind of in this suspicious case of testimony about the moon, and we're not quite sure if you're telling the truth, who's telling the truth. Any of those witnesses can still be valid witnesses for another case. Say for a case of a case of monetary value. So isn't that against Rav Chisda? Um, um, uh, yeah, Rav Chisda says that you can't use them in another case, and this seems to be saying you can. Amarava, hu va'acher mitzarfin le'edus acher shel Rosh Chodesh. No, it's like I originally said, that if another person comes along and validates his claim of 5 measures, then one of those one of the original witnesses who's previously been involved in this dispute can join with somebody else. And why would that be valid testimony against the first pair? Dehavaluhu trevachad, because then it's it's like 2 versus 1. Um, oh, okay. So there we go. So that's because the original was just 1 versus 1. But now, if the one is joining with somebody else, he has the nemonus of they together have the nemonus of 2 edim, and that we do accept. Okay, that's where we'll stop for today. Okay, sorry for the hesitancy there in that last case, but I think we finally got it. Have a good day, everybody.